The Utah Jazz won a big one. We got trade rumors and scenarios. And does Golden State need to hit the reset button? All that and more in today's episode of the Full Court Press Podcast. JD, run that intro, man. Hi, everyone. We're your hosts, Doc D and JD. It's December 3rd, and you are listening or watching to the Full Court Press Podcast. JD, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. It's been an exciting week and couple weeks of basketball, so I'm excited to get into it. How are you doing, Doc?
I'm doing fantastic. Something I really want to talk about, especially because we're Utah Jazz fans, is the incredible win we witnessed last night, which to me really represented the culture of the Utah Jazz, which to me, per Will Hardy, is toughness, passion, and sacrifice. Holy crap, that was fun. You watched that game. I know you did.
Oh yeah. I think my favorite aspect about this game is just the fact of we don't have Markkanen in there. You don't have Jordan Clarkson in there. But, it goes down to the wire. It gets intense. And, there's a lot of these guys who, may not have otherwise had some of these roles, but they're getting thrown into them. They're working hard and they're showing some grit. And I really appreciated that aspect.
I completely agree, man. Collin Sexton really stood out to me. He was a +4, 25 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds. And look, this was the Collin Sexton that the Utah Jazz were trading for, man. He was awesome. He showed poise. He had composure. He played 30 minutes of just incredible basketball. He had amazing shot selection. If this is the Collin Sexton that the Utah Jazz are going to get moving forward, in my opinion, they really have their six-man candidate for a championship caliber team. What do you think?
I think that a lot of our guards for the Utah Jazz, you've got Ochai Agbaji, you've got Jordan Clarkson, you've got Keontae George, and you've got Sexton, Talen Horton-Tucker. There's a plethora with the Utah Jazz. But they need a little bit more development, maybe some more than others. But I think, in my opinion, I have been seeing some progress made with Sexton. And I think a lot of people forget, and maybe even Utah Jazz fans forget this too. But before that trade, the Donovan Mitchell trade where we acquired Sexton was one of the highest usage rate to assists in the NBA. In fact, the lowest. He had the highest usage rate with the lowest amount of assists.
Right.
And so I think that can generally mean that maybe people that play with him could get frustrated. He did average, 20 to 24 in some of those early seasons, but it kind of came at a detriment too. He was never passing the ball. And I think you got to give kudos to Will Hardy in trying to develop him into more of, that point guard oriented role. Although I don't know if that's going to be his future spot. We were just talking about how he can be a six man or maybe a six man of the future for the Jazz. But, something I really like about it is that he is becoming more of a facilitator. You can tell some of his passes. In fact, in this game against the Trailblazers this past Sunday, I really think he showed a lot of grit, a lot of poise, like he always does. But I think especially he looked like he was a little bit of a floor general. He had some great passes. And I don't think the box score shows everything, but, he was having great finds. And quite frankly, I think the guard play as well, including Talen Horton-Tucker, I thought they did pretty well off the bench.
Yeah, that's masterfully said, my brother. You know what the box score doesn't cover, man, is just clutch buckets. And they really should they'll never make a stat for that, obviously. But Collin Sexton really helped the Jazz, and he propelled them to what I thought was an incredible victory. He showed a sense of maturity that I don't know if we have seen from him And like I love seeing that because like it shows that he is still malleable. You can still kind of like help him develop and grow. And like honestly, kudos to Will Hardy, man. Like he's taking players and he's kind of taking them out of their element and he's developing them into something greater. And I absolutely love that right now. um some other players of interest, at least in my opinion, I gotta talk about John Collins, man. A +4, 17-9. Um, Look, his best quality, in my opinion, outside of his athleticism, is just he is a rebounding machine. And what he's shown us here in Utah is that John the Baptist is consistent, man. And it's interesting because I remember talking to you offline before this season started, really before like the John Collins trade too. And like we had noticed there was a massive downward slide really in his offensive production, his production overall. And you know, like he's shooting 40% from 3 for the first time since 2019-2020. And you and I have talked offline about how we believe the system in Atlanta really did not cater to John Collins. Kind of after that 21-10 year, he got the massive contract extension. He was like their second option. And then it kind of spiraled down from there. But to see him jump literally, what is this, like 3 years going on 4 years, back to 40%. Like I love that. He's been consistent for us here in Utah. And dude, the pickup just for Rudy Gay, he is such a solid power forward. I'm very glad we have Collins. What's your take on him right now, man?
You know, I would love to really dive deep into John Collins, especially, John has recently come over from the Atlanta Hawks, as you know,
Yep.
and as you were mentioning, but I would like to really dive deep and do a further evaluation upon that trade and let us know in the comments below what you guys think about that. But, overall, I think since he's come over to the Utah Jazz, we have seen a lot of consistency from him. We've seen, he's shooting at a high clip from the 3-point. I think he might be the highest 3-point percentage on the team, sitting around 40 to 42%. And he's not shooting bad field goal percentage either, like he's shooting about 46 if I recall. And I think that he's been very good for us, and he's going to still be continuing in Hardy's system, developing, getting synergy with the team. So I can only assume that he's either going to basically be where he's at or get better. And I think where he's at right now, he's been a solid piece for us. And as you said before, with the trade just of Rudy Gay and a second-round pick, seems pretty good. I mean, a lot of times second-round picks don't pan out, and Rudy Gay was just like
very stagnant.
Rudy Gay,
very stagnant.
The thing I want to pose something here, and I think a lot of people that love John Collins might realize this as well. Is that, there's a little bit of, I don't really know how to put it with him. Because I think that you look at his stat sheet, his field goal percentage, but sometimes I see him just let people go by him on defense. I mean, he got something like 2 to 3 blocks last game, so he can really make an impact. But at other times, I don't know. Like Collins, he seems like great at sometimes, but also it doesn't seem like he's the most impactful player out there. Like I don't really think he can be a number 2 option for a team.
No, I totally
agree give him
with
third or fourth. I don't know. What do you think?
No, he totally can't be a number 2 option on a team. I mean, he was a number 2 option on a team with the Hawks, and that wound up to him getting traded. I totally agree with you. He's not a number 2 option. But I think he's a solid 4.
I'll argue that when he was number 2 option, didn't they make it to the Eastern Conference Finals in Atlanta?
They did. They
he was a 20-10 guy.
Yes, and that was his best season to date. But ever since then, there was the decline, and I mean, it led to him eventually getting traded. No, I agree with you. He can't be a number 2 option. But in terms of like what he does, I think he's fantastic. Like he'll get you the rebound, and that's honestly what we need him to do. His athleticism is bonkers. and he seems to be fitting in really well with our team, and I love that. Another shout out to KG3, our rookie. It's funny. Like my wife and I, we talk about how Keontae George is our son. That's how much we love him. We say, "Oh, our boy's playing." We love this kid. 21, 6-6, +1. 7 out of 17 from the field, 1 from 8 from 3. Personally, like he's not having a great shooting start really to his career, but honestly, like for a guy that set the Baylor record for most threes made as a freshman, I say just let the kid shoot. He's going to figure it out. He has a silky shot. He's a smart player. He's an incredible scorer, and he's working really well within this system. I love watching him play. Honestly, one of my favorite Keontae George moments was seeing him ask for the coach's challenge a few games ago. Like he's starting to settle in to his identity and who he's going to be for the Utah Jazz. I really think that he's going to be a great leader for this team one day when he continues to develop. Kessler didn't really have the best game, -4. He had 12 points, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks. I can't wait to see him return to the starting lineup. Ochai Agbaji was a +8, 6 points. This is crazy about the whole plus minus, JD. Ochai Agbaji is a +8, and he only had 6 points, 3 or 4 shooting, but he's also like an incredible defender at 6'5", super athletic. I just love what our team did last night. So this is the question I'm going to pose to you, man, because this is what I think really is what's important to us and Jazz fans. What are the expectations for this team going into next year, really, and this year? Like, we're going to finish out this year and go into next year. Like, what should we as fans expect?
Yeah, that's a good point. Good question to ask. And I even want to further that. Like, I expect some trades to happen. I expect something at the trade deadline. I expect something to happen in the offseason. I think there's still going to be some switch ups. But I think, if we are looking at teams that have won it, I want to take a look at somebody like Denver Nuggets. They got an MVP caliber player in Jokic.
My God,
okay, there's their cornerstone. Mm-hmm. They found Jamal Murray in the draft. 2 guys they found in the draft. They found Porter Jr. in the draft. And then they built around those guys. I think those 3, maybe another, were those pivotal pieces, but they weren't afraid to move off of those guys, some other guys, and just start adding, tweaking to make the team what they are today. And do we have the team, the roster right now, where we can say, okay, we want to keep these guys. These guys are the future of the Jazz, but it might be a while. I took a look at the upcoming games for the season. Let's just look at it right now while we have it. Utah Jazz, their upcoming games. We're against the Mavericks. The Mavericks are good. At the Mavericks, probably a loss. The Clippers at the Jazz.
There you go. We lost you for a second.
Oh, can you hear me?
No, we got you now. We lost you for a minute, though.
Okay. Well,
you're good, though.
Basically, what I was saying is that we don't necessarily know about the future of the Jazz, where that might be in terms of the roster. But what I do know is I don't think they're going to be very good right now. And I just wanted to take a look at some of the upcoming games. They're going against the Mavericks on Wednesday. That is likely to be a loss. I think the Mavericks are good. Clippers at the Jazz. I feel like the Clippers kind of have our number. Even with the addition of Harden, and they haven't totally found success there, I think they're going to win. Jazz at the Thunder. The Thunder have been finding huge success. Probably another loss. Knicks at the Jazz. There's potential there, but the Knicks are pretty good. Jazz at the Trailblazers. We seem to be pretty close with them, but it's at the Trailblazers. There's a chance we lose there. Jazz at the Kings. The Kings will probably beat us. So, just taking a look at these upcoming 5 to 6 games, there's probably a lot of losses coming in. And we
Right.
got to think, okay, are we developing for the future? Do we have corner pieces for the future? Or, like, what's the plan here? Should we
Hmm.
be bringing up Taylor Hendricks more often? Should we be bringing up Bryce Sensabaugh, who's been tearing it up in the G League? Or should we
Tearing it up.
be. What was that?
Oh, I said tearing it up. He is a
He really
demon,
is.
dude. He's an absolute demon.
So let me pose this question to you, Doc.
Let's talk about it.
What do you think is going to happen this year? Do you think that we're not going to finish well? Are we looking to get another draft pick, or are we looking to try and trade, do a little bit of both to get, somebody built around Lowry, or what's going on?
Well, I don't think there's a player out there that you can trade for that is going to change the trajectory of the Utah Jazz right now. I think that player was Damian Lillard. And we didn't try to get him. He was the only player that was technically available that could have sent us into legitimate contention. But at the same at the same time, on the same token, Lauri Markkanen is not Giannis Antetokounmpo, so the fit still there could have been questionable. I think the best plan right now is to let all these players develop, and that includes Lauri Markkanen. I'm this guy's biggest fan, dude. You know this. I love the finisher. I love the marksman. Lowry is a solid number 2 option guarantee with the potential to develop into a number 1 option. He's 26 years old. I think the reason we're not seeing the leap we thought he was going to have is because he decided to go and serve his country, and he went into basic training. As a vet myself, I respect that. I salute you, Lowry. Thank you for your service, especially to your country. But he's still playing himself back into basketball. I mean, you have to understand something. As a vet, I'm going to tell you this right now. We don't really touch basketballs during basic training. We're playing with guns, not playing with them, but we're training with guns, and we're training with rucksacks, and we're learning to be soldiers. This guy spent his entire off season doing that, and that was before. I think that was before FIBA, right? Or then he went into FIBA, played there, and he's probably exhausted. This is the first time that he really has turned that corner as a player. Last year he put up incredible numbers off of MVP statistics, and he put the league on notice. And the thing about the NBA that too, JD, is like they learn, man. You fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Scouting reports are out on Lauri Markkanen, man. They're going to double team him. They're going to make his life hard. And the fact that he's still putting up very consistent numbers on lower stats shows you that he's the kind of player we really should build around. Like I said, man, I fully believe this dude is he's a guaranteed number 2 option, Pat, or he has he has the potential to turn into a number 1 option. He's just 26 years old, man. 7 feet, 245. Like, he's the most efficient 3-point shooter, big man in the NBA. Like, I'll plant my flag on that, dude. Like, I would keep this kid no matter what. Let him develop. Let these young kids develop, okay? Let Keontae George continue to come along. Look, Ochai Agbaji, I love this kid. He's a great defender. He's a great perimeter defender. If he can just work on his stroke a little bit, he could become the next OG Anunoby. Just let this kid work on his shot. Ochai needs to figure out his shot selection, man. And he's done that the past few games, and I appreciate that about him. We have Walker Kessler, who's just a rim protecting menace. Like, they got this, dude. They got Taylor Hendricks, who is an incredible power forward who has great defensive instincts. Bryce Sensabaugh could be a 2 or 3 of the future for this team. He was the most efficient player last year in the NCAA tournament. Like, just let these kids kind of progress and let Lowry lead this team. That's what I have to say about this. I believe that we have the draft capital to continue to draft who we need to, but the team we have now, they may not look scary right now, but neither did OKC like 4 years ago. Do you know what I mean? But now look at OKC. They're knocking on the door. Everyone's paying attention to them because they're commanding respect. I think the Jazz can command respect in a few years. We just have to go through these growing pains, which suck as a fan, but that's just kind of how it is.
So you think we have the pieces already,
I think
and
we
they
have a
just need to
lot of them.
develop?
Yeah, I think we have 3 of the 5.
So who's the
I think
number one
Keontae
option?
George, I think Larry Marketing and Walker Kessler are pieces that once they reach their full potential, they'll absolutely be championship caliber players. I think Bryce Sensabaugh, you could put at the 2, and we would have to see what he can do, and we have to see what Taylor Hendricks can do, honestly.
And how long is that going to take?
In my opinion, man, I think we got at least 3 to 5 years, honestly. It's a long time, man.
Here's the issue, in my
All right.
opinion. I don't think any of these guys have showed potential to be an MVP caliber player. At least not yet. Not Lowry. And Lowry's our number one option right now. I don't think Lowry, and this might be hard for Jazz fans to hear. I'm a Jazz fan, but I don't think I don't know. I don't think any of us really think he is a top 15, even a top 20 player as of right now. So he needs to develop that.
At the
Can he
moment.
develop it? Maybe. You know,
At the
that's what
moment,
everybody stipulates. It's like this guy can
Like,
turn
he's a
into
top
this.
25 player.
Maybe.
No,
Yeah,
he
I think
definitely
he's
is
in
a
the top.
25 player. He's not a top
Probably
20
top
player.
25 to 30.
I agree with you. He's not a top 20 player at the moment. He's in the top 25 though, and he's 26, man.
Maybe.
He could put
So
it
I think
together.
he could be a good piece for sure. He could be the piece. You know, not the piece, but I think he's going to be a number 2 option.
Fair.
I think if you throw him on the Nuggets, for instance, he's going to be a 2 or 3 option. You throw him on the Celtics, second or third option, probably more on the third option type thing. You know, you throw him on the 76ers, you know, he's never the primary option because these guys have MVP caliber level players. And
Yes.
can Lowry transform into that? Perhaps, but I think we're seeing basically an incredible player, you know, a guy who can average anywhere between 24 to 26, 27 a game, which is absolutely amazing for a 7-footer and the things that he does. But what I'm afraid of is that the Jazz are going to turn into a losing culture. You know, what can very easily happen is you continue to lose, and this is why, you know, against the Trailblazers, winning that game is so crucial to be winning games, because if you consistently lose as a team, I think the team begins to kind of tune out stuff. They begin to tap out. They stop caring, you know? We've seen that happen before. We've seen that, you know, people can get in ruts. Teams can get in ruts where they just, you know, they're just going, they're coasting through things. And I think a lot of that is on coaching to try and keep people in check. But I mean, look at these worst teams in the NBA, you know, teams like Detroit Pistons. They've just been consistently losing. They've got Cade Cunningham, who's an incredible player. They've got pivotal pieces. You know, I love Detroit and what they have, but it's just like it just doesn't seem to be working. They continue to dive in to the draft, and the Utah Jazz, they also have a plethora of draft picks. And what ends up happening is you just keep getting these young guys with a ton of potential, and then you have too many, you know? I mean, look at Detroit. They've got Jaden Ivey, who's potentially coming off the bench now. They've got
Yeah, that's insane, by the way.
I know. They've got Cade Cunningham, who's, you know, he's obviously getting a lot of time, but they have a bunch of these top 10 draft picks like Killian Hayes doesn't seem to be panning out too much for them. They've got Asar Thompson, who's starting to demand more minutes. So it's taking minutes from other guys who have potential. And, you know, that's kind of what I feel like was happening to the Rockets as well until they made some big trades, you know? And kudos to them. I thought that they overpaid Van Fleet and Dylan Brooks, but they brought in Ime Udoka, who's probably going to be coach of the year. And then he turned the program around with, you know, some extra pieces, some veterans who were good. And so I'm afraid of that happening to the Jazz. I want to live within the draft and get lucky and get, you know, somebody who can turn into a top 10 player.
Right.
But I don't know how long that's going to take. And with the current state of the Utah Jazz, they've got Keontae George, who I think
Yes.
is somebody who you can build around, who I think has potential to be a 20 to 25 point guy per night.
Yes.
But if
Absolutely.
you are losing, which we're going to lose this year, we are likely to get another top 10 draft pick.
Mhm.
And you know what? Maybe we should think about that, because if we go beyond 10, like if we get the 11th or 12th draft pick, then we're giving that to OKC, and we don't want that, you know? And so you get another top 10 draft pick. What are you going to do with that? You get another really young guy. It's going to postpone being a contender, being very, very good, because this guy needs to develop now. You keep doing that, you keep cycling in these new young guys. It just takes longer and longer. But that's a part of the process. Look at Orlando Magic. They got Paolo Banchero, Franz
Yes.
Wagner. They needed to wait, until they got really pivotal pieces who could be the cornerstone of their franchise. And now look at them. They're one of the top teams. And Doc, I know that we talked a little bit about this before.
Mhm.
I don't think anybody really predicted Orlando to be doing as good as they did. But in one of our previous videos, I thought that they were making the playoffs. You could just tell from last season. They
Yes.
started to bring it, they were losing quite a bit at the very beginning, but they brought it together. You could see it. And I knew they were going to make the playoffs this season.
Yes, you did. And you were right on the money. And I love that. Um, let me go back for 1 second here, because I'm going to defend, as crazy as this sounds, I'm going to defend the Detroit Pistons just a little bit. Monty Williams is a brilliant coach, as we know. I'm not thrilled about taking Ivy out of the starting lineup, or Asar Thompson, honestly. But those are the players I would continue to play consistently with Cade Cunningham. They had the worst November of like any team ever. I think they lost like 15 in a row, which is insane. But the resurgence and the homecoming of Bojan Bogdanovic, even though they lost against the Cavs, JD, like, the saying is, it's nice to have adults in the room, man. I think that's why Houston has been so successful, is because they have Van Fleet, and love him or hate him, Dylan Brooks has been in the league a few years now. It's good to have adults in the room. Bojan Bogdanovic is an adult in the room. I can guarantee they're not going to have a December the way they had a November. That was just god awful. The Jazz aren't going to become that, though. I can promise you that. The way that Will Hardy is switching things up, the way he's trying to adapt, they're just not going to become that team, man. Like, especially because, like, they don't have a player like Lauri Markkanen like we have. Like, Lauri is really something special. We're going to hold on to him. I don't think Cade's better than Lauri, dude. I really don't.
But I think Cade could become better than him. I mean, like, let's take a look at what he's averaging.
I don't think he could, man. I don't.
Averaging...
I think Lauri's ceiling is a lot higher, personally. Because Lauri, dude, to me, Lauri can be the next Dirk, man. Like, he is that efficient. He's that big man. But that's
he needs to become a better ball handler if he's going to.
Yes, he does. Well, we've talked about that. He has to improve that. He has to improve ISO. But let's segue into our next question, which is going to be fun. Let's talk about some trade scenarios, man. Who do you think is even going to be on the Utah Jazz after the trade deadline? I'll tell you one guy who I really don't think is going to be on there, as much as I love this man, is Jordan Clarkson, dude. I think Jordan Clarkson, I think KO, and I think THT, because the latter two have expiring contracts, are valuable trade pieces. And if I was the Utah Jazz and I was looking to not necessarily catapult myself into contention, because I don't know if there's a player out there that, or a trade out there that's going to let them do that, I think one trade that would really benefit the Utah Jazz and the Trailblazers would be Jordan Clarkson, a 2029 second, a 2030 second for Malcolm Brogdon. Now, hear me out on this, all right? The Trailblazers are way behind in their rebuild. They just started. They know Malcolm Brogdon, even though he's a fantastic presence for Scoot Henderson, they understand that he's not going to be their point guard of the future. And in reality, you're getting a great scoring injection from Jordan Clarkson. And I don't know if winning right now is like the highest priority for the Trailblazers because they bench Scoot Henderson. They clearly want him to develop. I think next to a guy like Clarkson with 2 seconds, especially with how much draft picks are now valued nowadays, would be enough to get that done. They've both been prior sixth men of the year. Personally, I think Clarkson is better than Malcolm Brogdon, especially in terms of scoring volume. And I think that's something he could mentor Scoot with, because like Scoot really doesn't need to like learn how to pass the ball. Like he understands how to do that and he's great at that. Scoot needs to learn how to score, man. Like who better to teach him some tricks of the trade than Jordan Clarkson? Jordan Clarkson, we call him the flamethrower here in Utah. Like the human torch, man, the chameleon, the magician. He has all these names. He knows how to score. Scoot already knows how to pass. You're not really giving him any kind of mentorship that he's probably not already received from Malcolm Brogdon. Malcolm Brogdon's a fantastic point guard. He really is. But you need to show Scoot how to get the ball in the hoop, because that right now is kind of a struggle. I think Jordan Clarkson can show him how to do that. Plus you get 2 seconds. Like that to me seems like a great trade. And then Malcolm Brogdon, a veteran point guard, can go to the Utah Jazz. And, you know, if our listeners disagree with this, please let us know in the comments. But Malcolm Brogdon can help mentor and develop KG3 to become a better point guard. But the reason I think this works is because KG3 can score. Scoot can't. Scoot can pass. KG3 is still developing that skill in his game. You know what I mean?
So the logic...
You see where I'm coming
understanding,
from, right?
The logic here is that the Jazz acquire Brogdon, and Brogdon can help develop, you know, they need a mentor for Keontae George, some veteran guard who, you know, knows the game. And then vice versa, you got the Trailblazers receiving Jordan Clarkson, who is a shooter, and he's going to help mentor Scoot Henderson. You tag on a couple second rounds, and that could help strengthen that deal. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, I mean, what's Scoot's major struggle right now? He can't score.
Well, Scoot's struggling with everything. I think that if I'm the Trailblazers, I'm not doing this. I don't think Clarkson's even playing well at all this year. I mean, he's shooting the most for the Utah Jazz right now, around 15 to 20 shots a game. He's shooting around, what is it, like barely 40% field goal percentage as your primary guy who's shooting the ball. And then you have him shooting from 3 around 32, 33%, which is below league average. So he's not only below league average. It's not his best year, but I mean, I don't know why you would want, like, he's a flamethrower. If you want to trade Jordan Clarkson, I think the teams that would really want to get him are the contenders that could put him in a 6-man role where he could, you know, just become a flamethrower off the bench. I don't think that this trade is really going to go through. I think it would be ideal for the Jazz. I would love to pawn off, but also we have a guard problem. I think if you want to look at the Utah Jazz and the trades that they're probably want to look at, you have too many guards and just too many players overall that are demanding too many minutes. I mean, if you take a look at a team like the Nuggets again, for instance, the Nuggets, they only had like an 8 or 9 man rotation. The Jazz are playing like 12 to 13 people per game. You know, it's just too many of the people don't really have their identity.
We lost you for a second.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I covered down for you. You're saying we have too many guards, and you're right.
Yeah, so too many guards, and what I'm getting at is that the real likely people that maybe anybody would want, because it's a two-way deal. You got to say, hey, if we're trading people we don't want, there's got to be a team that wants them, right? So the only people that I could really see teams really wanting would be okay. Maybe somebody's looking for a backup point guard. Sexton has shown he can kind of do that. I don't know if anybody's really going to want THT. He's just going to maybe be an
No
expiring
way,
contract, and
man.
he's not bad. Like I don't think
There's
any of
so
these guys
much
are
hate
really
on
that
that
bad.
guy. There's too much hate on THT, bro. There
Well, I
really
mean, they
is.
struggle. They're out of control. Both Sexton and THT just run it in, and then they get out of control. But you see, this previous game against the Blazers, I thought they both did very well, and I think Sexton was one of the main reasons they won. So that happens every once in a while, just like Clarkson. Every once in a while, Clarkson will, go off and be the reason that the Jazz win. But most of the time, these guys are out of control. And so, but I think, bringing it back, I think that people would likely want, teams rather, would likely want maybe Sexton if we're lucky, if somebody would want him as a backup or six man. Jordan Clarkson on a contender, maybe like the Miami Heat or, somebody who is just wanting a bit more fuel off the bench, or maybe Olynyk. And Olynyk is just like an overall good player. He does good things. He makes good plays. Those are likely the guys that I think will be potentially traded at the deadline or could be traded. And if you do that, if you trade somebody like Olynyk, who I really enjoy Olynyk,
God, I love
but
KO. He's so good.
what can
So much
happen
fun.
is just like you might free up some space for Taylor Hendricks to be coming, He's
True.
been showing that, this previous game with the Trailblazers this past Sunday, that you bring him off the bench, he looked incredible on defense. And he even made some good plays on offense, and that was his first real game, in the NBA. And so I am proud of him. I thought he did incredible. But in terms of trade scenarios, I think if you realize that you are losing and that you're going to be losing, you got to develop these guys, and you want to have a winning culture too. You can't just have only young guys, and then I think that'll make
Yes.
the team much
You
worse.
need adults in the room. That's why I'm saying now that Bojan's back for the Pistons, man, that's what I'm saying. They're not going to
I
lose
think they
like
want to get rid
15.
of Bojan. I've seen some
They're
rumors.
asking for something crazy. They want a prize young player and draft capital, and it's like people are starting to request crazy things for trade value nowadays, man. They're not getting that for Bojan. That's insane.
Let me ask you something. Since we are talking about trade scenarios, there have been a lot of sources that are talking about one particular team that might be on the rebuild. That team's the Chicago Bulls. And we have heard sources say that DeMar DeRozan might be on the out. Where do you think he's going?
Well, we know that he came out and he stated that if he were to go anywhere, he would love to go to Miami. Shocker. Super warm there. I've been to Miami. That water on that beach, man. Whew. It's like a hot tub. It's beautiful. But he'd also like to go to New York. And that surprised me a little bit. Not because the fan base isn't incredible, because they are. Not because New York isn't one of the greatest cities in the United States, because it is. But because they just have not had a winning culture really till recently. But the fact that DeMar DeRozan said that, oof. If you're a Knicks fan, this is what you want to hear. Because we love the Knicks, man. We love their fan base. We love their city. We love their team. We're not a fan of James Dolan. Who is? But we've been kind of waiting for them to be relevant for a long time. And last year, they really knocked on the door. Going to the second round, having an incredible series with the Heat. And the fun thing about the New York Knicks is they have the draft capital to really make a move, if they wanted to, that could put them over the edge. Now, personally, in my opinion, I think the Knicks are solid. I like Jalen Brunson. I like Julius Randle. He can be hit or miss. I love Josh Hart. Josh Hart is one of the best shooting guard rebounders in the NBA. He's a great energy dude. Quentin Grimes has left a lot to be desired. Emmanuel Quickley is solid. This is a good team. I don't necessarily feel like they have to make trades, but if they were to make one for DeRozan, I have something set up that I think would work. And Knicks fans might not like this, but hey, you got to roll with what you got. DeMar DeRozan goes to the New York Knicks, and the Chicago Bulls are going to receive Evan Fournier, Emmanuel Quickley, a 2024, and a 2026. Now, before we get crucified by the entire city of New York, hear me out. And you guys probably know this too, if you're diehard Knicks fans. Look, Quickley, we actually talked about this in our extension video last season, JD, when we were talking about how the Knicks desperately needed to extend Quickley because of his incredible production, but no extension was negotiated. They offered Quickley $18 million. He said, nope, I don't want that. He was looking more in the range of 25, and now Quickley is possibly going to walk in free agency, which is kind of a freak out moment if you're a New York Knicks fan, because he's incredible. Personally, and I am a Knicks fan, I would have paid him whatever he wanted to keep him, because I believe that his offensive production and defensive production was worth it. I mean, JD, we did an entire PowerPoint about Emmanuel Quickley. I remember putting it up and making the case as to why this guy deserved his money and he deserves his bag. But the truth is, they just didn't pay him, and he wasn't going to take $18 million. This guy's probably going to leave, which sucks, but that's the reality of the situation. So why not put him in a deal, sweeten the pot? Evan Fournier has about $18 million coming to him, but he has a team option. So if the Bulls want to, they can just dump him essentially next year. Okay, so you're really trading DeMar DeRozan for Emmanuel Quickley and 2 first-rounders, but the Bulls are in such an ugly place right now. Why not take a shot on a new young player? I mean, the only young player, we're going to talk about this in a second, but the only young player on this team is Patrick Williams, and he sucks. He was their 4th pick in the 2020 draft. He's averaging 8 points. The dude sucks. It's sad. It's unfortunate, but the Bulls need to do something. This is a desperate move. You're going to unload DeRozan, who's probably going to leave anyways, but you're going to get back Emmanuel Quickley, who you can pay. You get 2 first-rounders, and hey, you're starting your rebuild. Jay, what do you think, man?
Well, he wants to play in New York. That's a destination spot for him. So you got to know that they're making phone calls over there, seeing what they can do, what is reasonable, what they wouldn't do. But I would be willing to go all in for DeRozan. I think that the Knicks are at a point where they are good enough where if they just get a absolute stud, that they could, become a contender and win it all. I mean, we didn't see too long ago where Toronto was something like the 7th, 6th, 8th seed, something like that. And then they got a guy by the name of Kawhi Leonard, and then they won it all, And is DeMar Kawhi? No, but DeMar is an absolute stud, and he can do a lot for you. And so could you imagine, I would even be willing to trade Randall to get DeMar on the team, because I just think DeMar DeRozan, he's the truth, man. I think that he's an absolute stud, and he can really bring it. He can be the number 1 option for this Knicks squad, who even has Brunson. You just keep pairing off that. You've got RJ Barrett. You've got a good core. You got Josh Hart. You got the defense there too. I think those guys could go far, and that could be a coveted piece. So I do think the Knicks are trying to look into that. And I do think that DeMar DeRozan is going to be traded. And I think that he's going to get traded sooner than maybe we even anticipate. But I do think it's going to be this year. And I believe he's going to be potentially a New York Knick by the end of it all. And that would be huge, for the Knicks fans. And that would be something, we're basing this off of what the sources are saying. Where there's smoke, there is fire. And so, it might be something to get excited about.
Yeah, I mean the Knicks right now are fifth in the East, and like I said, I think they're solid, especially with a second advancing to the second round of the playoffs last year and smashing the Cavs. I don't know if they need to make a trade, but if they wanted to, they definitely have the assets. And Brunson, DeRozan, Barrett. I mean, I like Randall. I know Randall's hit or miss, and Mitchell Robinson, Josh Hart coming off the bench. You got Emmanuel Quickly will be traded in this scenario. But you got Quentin Grimes. Like, this is a good team, man. Under Tibbs too. Like, they'll fight you to the death, dude. And I really like that. So
No, I love their coach.
yeah, Tibbs.
I think he's such a good coach.
He doesn't care about anything but winning, and I love that. Speaking of winning, JD, I think it's time for us to do our new segment, the panic button. Now, I'm really excited for this because, honestly, we have a few teams that we think really need to hit the panic button. And how this is going to work is I'm going to give JD a team. He's going to give me a scale of 1 through 10 on whether or not he thinks they need to hit the panic button or not. And then we're going to dive into detail about that team, essentially. And JD, we're going to start with the Chicago Bulls.
Are they in panic mode? I think that their fans are probably not panicking because they just have been struggling for quite a while. But if you think in terms of
they're just
you're going to be a full rebuild, yes, I would be in panic. I think if you do not do anything, you are in panic mode. And it looks like they're shifting, the Chicago Bulls are shifting to do something like that. But let's say for the sake of nothing has been done right now, and if nothing gets done, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm at about an 8. And here's why.
Right. Yes.
Chicago Bulls have been consistently mediocre ever since Lonzo Ball got injured.
Oh, yeah.
And you need to do something. You need to make changes. And everybody thought that there was going to be changes made this past offseason where, okay, the Chicago Bulls are going to acquire somebody, they're going to be trading off somebody, and nothing happened. And that just hurts, as a Chicago Bulls fan. That kills to see that nothing gets done, where you're just as bad as you were this past season. There seems to be more drama going on behind the scenes. You see, LaVine not playing as much.
How many players meetings are we going to have here? You know what I mean? Like, it's like every single loss, they have a players meeting, and it's like, what's going on here?
Yeah, I just think that Chicago is in such a tricky spot, and I think that they need to just get on full rebuild. Do what the Utah Jazz did, and they might not get the haul the Utah Jazz did. That's the crazy thing, but I think you need to start looking at the draft again and just rebuild because it has not worked out. But maybe you can get some really good assets. I mean, LaVine is good. You can get some first rounds out of him. DeMar DeRozan is good. You can get first rounds out of him. And then you might even consider trading some more pieces and just kind of lean on maybe what's coming up next, for the future. What do you think?
Here's my problem with this team is DeRozan and LaVine, while they're both individually incredible players, they just don't complement each other now that Lonzo Ball is gone. And this should have been a reset like 2 years ago. Honestly.
It's a travesty because Lonzo just brings everybody really together.
And you know what, man? That's what really sucks about this is because Lonzo Ball is so underrated because his dad hyped him up and I love that. I'm a father myself. I'd hype up my kids. He went to the Lakers. He didn't have the best performance whatsoever. He went to the Pelicans. He got his legs under him and he went to the Bulls and he was he found out who he was. And I was like, oh, damn, we're cooking with gas now. And he got hurt and it just breaks my freaking heart, man. I love Lonzo Ball. But the truth is, you're right. This team's never been the same ever since he got hurt. They picked up Javon Carter, which is interesting because it stopped the Sumo's development. And I really don't understand that. They also grabbed Torrey Craig, which seemed to be a weird band-aid for that whole situation. Patrick Williams, man, he's been a complete disappointment. And like, I'm not saying that this isn't personal. None of these things are personal. These are facts. When you're the 4th pick in the 2020 draft and you're averaging 8 points per game in 2023, 2024, you're a disappointment. It wouldn't matter what team you're playing for. It actually shocks me, JD, that the Utah Jazz even had interest in this player at one point. Like, I remember there were rumors about trying to trade Rudy Gobert, for Patrick Williams, and then obviously other filler. But that's insane to me when you look at who this player is now. He just has not played up to par. This team just doesn't have a lot of talent. The most exciting player on this team is Alex Caruso, man. Like, the Caruso show. And that's not a slight to him. Everywhere this guy goes, LA and Chicago, he becomes like a cult legend. The Bald Eagle, the Caruso show. Like, for $10 million annually, this guy gives you really great perimeter defense. He's a hustler. He gives you pretty good shooting as well. I like Alex Caruso a lot. Honestly, I would even go to say that he's like the second most valuable trade asset on this team, but we can get into that later. But I'm just disappointed with this legacy. LaVine, man, I love Zach LaVine. This sucks to say, dude, but once again, this is not personal. He just has bad knees. He's the third option. He's making $40 million a year. He has $170 million left. And a lot of contending teams outside of Denver already have a shooting guard. I mean, name me one that doesn't. You know what I mean? This guy just isn't what he used to be, and it sucks because injury can do that to you. But even Woj said himself, there's just not a market for Zach LaVine, and you really don't have to look any further than the Nets game, which happened on the 26th of November. I think the Nets actually set their franchise record for most threes in a game at 25. Yeah, no, I'm right on that. But I think it was in the third quarter, someone set this pin down screen for him, and he just kind of didn't move. And it was he's just so lifeless off the ball that there's no hustle there, man. And that's the problem, is when you put the ball in his hands, Zach LaVine is super dynamic. He's incredible. But when you take the ball away from him, there's just not a lot there. And it makes sense why a lot of contending teams aren't clamoring for this guy's services. DeRozan's going to be on his way out. I mean, he's already making comments about, hey, I'd love to be traded to New York or Miami. Send me wherever. The only silver lining to this team right now is the fact that they didn't fire Billy Donovan. Normally, we see this all the time, man. I mean, what happens when a team has a bad season? They fire the coach, right? What happened to the 76ers? The 76ers didn't have a good season. They fired Doc Rivers, man. The Lakers weren't up to snuff. They fired their coach, right? Everyone, the Utah Jazz. What happened with us? What was the first thing we did before we traded players? We fired Quinn Snyder. Teams will generally fire a coach before they start to trade players. And in my opinion, Billy Donovan really isn't the problem. So I'm glad they didn't fire him, man. I kind of like that. That's really, to me, is the only silver lining to this. But when I think of the Chicago Bulls, I think of a pristine legacy that was led by Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Dennis Rodman, and seeing what they are right now, just it's sad, dude. They got to hit. This is an 8 out of 10. You got to hit the reset. They got to change everything, man.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you who else I think is in panic mode, and you give me a scale of 1 to 10 here.
All right.
I'm thinking that the Golden State Warriors, who have been such a dominant force this past decade, they're starting to, their age is starting to catch up to them. Maybe besides Steph Curry, but it seems all of the investment on these guys has paid off, but it might come at a detriment, and they might be in struggle mode for the next upcoming years. What do you think? What would you rate out of 10?
I wish we could go to 11. because they're just bad, man. And look, here's the thing too. Like, once again, this is not personal. This is just the facts. This is why people listen to us. They're 9 of 11. You have a $211 million salary. You're the number one salary in the NBA. You're paying $195 million in luxury tax. So in reality, this team's like a $400 million team. All right. Can you really justify being in the play-in tournament right now? No, you can't. That's insane. Look, I got a question for you, JD. This will be fun. This is funny. As of November 20th, okay, what do you think they ranked in transition frequency? 1 through 36.
Transition frequency?
Yeah, 1 through 36. What do you think they were?
What even is transition frequency?
Transition movement, offense and defense.
Oh, what are they dead last because they're all old?
Close, man. 29th. And when I think of Golden State, back me up here if you agree, I think of like a couple things. I think of like volume 3-point shooting because of obviously Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. And then I think of just like a ferocious transition defense and offense. Like, I remember back in like 2015, man, back when like Draymond Green could actually rebound. Like, that was a long time ago, obviously. I remember this dude catching rebounds, and I remember Klay and Steph running up the court, and they were already in position. What made this team so dangerous back then was they were a transition nightmare. They would just cook you in transition, and they could cook you off the three-pointer. Like, that's what made Golden State, at least in my opinion, like, so special. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And they're just not that team anymore. They're not even close to that team.
The issue with Golden State is definitely the fact that their age is catching up, in my opinion, and the fact that they have paid all of these guys these enormous salaries, and it's just unsustainable, especially if you're not winning. So you got to give them kudos. Obviously, they have built up this amazing franchise, basically on the coattails of Steph Curry, by the way. Just want to put that out there. But I think that Klay Thompson's not who he used to be. Draymond Green, obviously, I think is the most overrated player in the NBA. But he's not what he used to be either. And you can see it. These guys are underperforming. And what's worse is, the older you get, the more likely you probably are that, you get frustrated with yourself. I mean, like, let's take a look at senior citizens. These guys, maybe get their license revoked or something. This is all hypothetical, but like, you get your license revoked. It's hard. It hurts. You get upset. You're sad about it. That's what's happening to these senior citizen Golden State Warriors. Like, they injured. They're just not as good as they used to be. So they get, chippy. How many times have we seen Draymond just go berserk? Like with Gobert, that extra long chokehold. He should be out for the season. But it seems like Adam Silver has a soft spot for the Warriors.
That's
the same thing with Klay. Nobody wants to bring up Klay, but he was with McDaniels. It was his fault. He started that. These guys are just chippy because they're getting old. They're not as good as they used to be.
No, I totally agree, man. And that's the problem with Draymond. He can't even stay in the game, man. So, like, he was suspended for 5 games. He was thrown out of 2. He almost got thrown out of the Kings game where they were up by 25 and they lost that game.
He's got issues.
And we'll talk about that in a second. But, like, dude, even the guys on TNT, Kenny the Jet Smith, he even called Draymond out, dude. He said, at what point are you going to stop acting like a rookie? Like, you're a champion, you're a veteran, and like, you're setting a bad example. You can't even play basketball anymore because you can't stay on the court. Like, there's a problem with that. Like, he karate chopped Malik Monk and then looked at the ref like he was trying to get thrown out. At this point, Mr. Triple Single is just not who he used to be. He knows that. Like, and I've said this before, man. Like, once you start a podcast, as an NBA player, you know that your career's over, man. And the problem
What
with
about
Draymond is
PG?
like, dude, it's true. Like Draymond can't even stay on the court anymore. Like he used to be a glue guy for them. He used to be their transition passer. He used to be a great defensive player. He used to be like the guy who could cut and like he would attack the offense and then he would kick out to Steph or Clay. He's not that guy anymore. And it's not just him, man. Klay Thompson, 15 points per game. You're making 42 million, my man. Like that's all we're gonna get from you.
Well, I just want to quickly point out that Paul George has a podcast and he's still killing it.
That's fair, and I love the podcast P. I really do. Like his podcast is a lot of fun. Actually, I listened to him talk to Lou Williams, and he made this great argument for why Lou Will is the greatest six man of all time. And honestly, like he's not lying. Like Lou Williams does not get the credit he deserves, and maybe one day we'll talk about that. But I got three names for us right now since we're talking about Golden State: Andrew Wiggins, Chris Paul, Klay Thompson. None of these guys are doing anything. Okay. Look, JD, I got a fun question for you. Okay, the first 11 games, there was only one player to score over 20 points for Golden State. It was Steph Curry. Can you guess who the other two were after 11 games?
Who?
Just
Moody,
Brandon Pujansky, and Dario Saric.
Wow.
That's where we're at.
That's a crazy stat.
Yeah, dude, that's an insane stat. And that's the problem, is when we're looking at this team, you're right. They're underperforming. You're blowing a 25-point lead to the Kings. They're the new kids in town. Dude, Mike Brown coached for the Golden State Warriors. You're seriously going to tell me that he's just going to take the same offensive schematic and go to a younger, more athletic team and just blow you guys out of the water? It's honestly embarrassing. They went 1-1 versus the Clippers. And you know what? Podcast P, the guy we're talking about, he came out after their win and he said the reason we beat them is because they don't have a rim protector. The Clippers whooped their ass, man. Like it's embarrassing. They traded Jordan Poole, which was a huge mistake. They traded James Wiseman, which was really stupid. These are young players that they could have developed. They're just barely giving Moses Moody minutes. Thank God. But like Jonathan Kuminga, he's never had a chance. Like Steve Kerr, man, like he's living in the past, man. He's trying to put this, like he's made comments before. We've heard him say this. This is not the place to develop young players. And now we're watching them bite them in the ass. Well, I mean, why is Andrew Wiggins shooting 60% from the rim? Like, didn't he just dunk on Luka like 2 years ago in the playoffs? You're telling me that this guy can't get to the rim anymore? Steph Curry has a 30% usage. He's averaging almost 30 points per game. Like, he's already putting this team on his back. Who else is going to step up? It's not going to be Draymond. Draymond can't offensively do anything. It's embarrassing. I mean, he put up 21 points against the Clippers, thank God, but he also missed the corner three for the winning bucket. Like, there just has to be a massive overhaul for this team. Bob Myers is already gone. They traded Jordan Poole. I don't care what anyone says. They're missing him because Chris Paul is already hurt. Gary Payton's hurt. Guess what? This team isn't making the playoffs. They're just not. I said that last year. No one liked that. No one agreed with it. But guess what? That's what's happening. Like, this team is not who they used to be. JD, we talked about the most electric playoff series last year, which in my opinion, hopefully your opinion, was the Kings versus the Warriors. I loved that. You said the Warriors were going to win in 7, and they did. I said the Kings were going to win in 7. They lost. But damn, it was incredible, JD. I still remember that playoff series. I remember the Kings going to Golden State. They were down 3-2. And everyone said, nah, Golden State's going to close them out. And the Kings won. And it was incredible. That was box office. But I remember after that playoff series happened, Golden State looked hurt and they looked old. And now, coming into this year, they're 9-11. They got the biggest payroll in the NBA. And brother, they look old.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a lot. I just have a lot to say because like this
No,
team
that's
needs
good.
an overhaul, man.